everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. After a little break, we're back. Thanksgiving is over. We're officially in the Christmas season. We are your morning show for any hour. I'm your host, Mary Katharine, and this is my co-host, Vic Matus of the Free Beacon. We got a lot going on today. Obviously, we're going to update on Israel and the hostage situation in particular. We got some media bias on Israel. Go figure, I was able to find some. And we have some 2024 news, of course, and some inflation and some tax updates for you guys. Tax updates. We'll get into it. But before that, what's going on, Vic?
Hello, Mary Katharine. Happy post-Thanksgiving. It feels like a little bit of a break to us, but in fact, for our listeners, I don't think they missed a beat because we taped ahead, and so we are continuing to be on schedule.
Yeah, we sacrificed and drank copious amounts of Christmas beer so that they
could
have that content.
We did. You know what? I didn't get any gout. So I'm not sure what to make of that.
I think you're probably invincible now. That's what you should do.
Yes, I should. It's probably the oatmeal that causes it now. That's what I'm down to, oatmeal and green beans. I do want to, actually, I'm just going to throw this out here. A heads up, next week, I may or may not be here for an episode because I have been called up for jury duty.
Oh, that's right.
Now, how it works, however, in Virginia is you have to call the night before. Okay. So at around, so then the evening you call in and they'll tell you to show up or not.
That seems like a bad system, but
yeah,
okay.
I don't know. And so if they say to show up, then that's where I'll be, but I won't know until Monday night.
I have never been called for jury duty. I've never even been requested.
No.
Civic duty has said no thank you to me.
They always
hard pass on MK.
When I lived in Washington, D.C., it was every 2 years like clockwork. I got selected twice and once as a foreman.
Oh,
and
wow.
The thing is, it really is a pain to go down to the district, to the Carl Moultrie, the first building. But once you get into the courtroom and you forget everything, actually, because you leave everything behind. Right. And then you just get sucked into whatever the case is.
And you take your job very seriously.
Everybody did. I don't know. I don't remember if we mentioned this on this show, but on one particular trial that I was a juror on, it went on for several days. And you go around the table, okay, guilty, not guilty, guilty, not guilty. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's not guilty? You try to convince each other.
Right.
And then we finally got to the point where we finally convinced, like, the one skeptic we thought we had to sway from not guilty to guilty. Okay. And then we got to this one girl, and she was young, and said, "Okay, guilty or not guilty?" And she goes, "Fine, guilty." You're not supposed to say that.
Justice system at work.
No, and so a professor who I had, everyone gets to know each other very well in these rooms, and we disagreed very much. We were on opposite sides politically, but he was a professor, I think at GW at the time, and he stopped everything. And he's like, "You can't say that. These people, their lives are in your hands.
Real person. Yeah.
Real person. And you can't just be like," and then she was just like, I don't care. I just got to get out of here. I guess she had cabin fever, but juror room fever. And
I can imagine that.
Yes. So
if then we had civic duty and the democracy wanted me to do this ever, I could imagine.
Yes. And then finally she at least gave us the appearance of being convinced enough that we could just have to take her word.
In good conscience, you could let that slide.
Yes.
Okay.
So there is that. So that is possibly going to happen next week. I'm glad it didn't happen this past week because of Thanksgiving, which, by the way, was lovely at Kate's cousins.
Nice.
One injury, me.
Okay.
What
did you do?
Well, I was doing the bar, and my brother-in-law's wife.
That's the liquor bar, not the lifting bar. Yes.
As you know, with my back. Yeah. And I made a giant pitcher of Manhattans, which was amazing. And so I was helping get a glass for my brother-in-law's wife, and I couldn't find her, so I just grabbed a random one. And I noticed there was lipstick mark on it, so I wanted to clean the glass off.
Right.
And I couldn't get the lipstick mark, and the glass broke on my finger and sliced it across right here, if you're watching this on YouTube.
Oh gosh. Be careful, I have to blur that out.
Blood was just coming out.
Why does it look so fine now?
I'm a quick healer, I guess.
Look at that.
It just
also,
cut
why
across.
did my voice just go so high? Calm down, MK.
Okay. Wrapped it up. I think it helps when you're drinking to have the accidents because you're less freaked out by the cut of glass on your finger.
Oh, well, wrap it up in a napkin.
Just wrap it up. And I'm like, meanwhile, like blood's shooting into the sink. So fine. It was fine. And I will tell you this, one last thing, which is for the first time and the only time in my life, I found myself more useful in a situation than both my father-in-law and my brother-in-law,
and
Captain
it was not
Dwyer.
comma related.
It was not comma related,
okay.
no. So I come over. How's everybody doing? They're doing the wine, breaking open the bottles and stuff. And my brother-in-law and my father-in-law were like, they can't get the bottle open. They said, this cork, we can't remove the cork. Can you take a look at this? And they were drilling halfway through this hard plastic. I look at them and I said, it's a screw top. And I just took a
Look at you.
It, and I relished the moment.
Yeah.
And I reveled in the moment and said, the one time that I knew something that like neither of them could figure out.
Love it.
It was bizarre.
Also, I love that you used both relish and revel properly.
Oh, I did.
My editor friend.
Oh.
That is something. This is a pet peeve of mine.
Okay.
People are always like,
relish the mono.
I relish in
reveled in
it, and getting them mixed up. And I'm like, no, relish it. Revel in it.
Oh, yes. Oh,
These
that's
are two
me.
different things.
That is me, by the way, with myriad. It's myriad.
Yes. Not myriad
of.
of.
Oh, Mary
Oh, my
Katharine,
God. Hot
woman
editor
after
talk.
my woman after my own heart. How are you? How was Thanksgiving?
It was good. We went to Steve's family's home, which is close to my family's home. So we can kind of ping pong back and forth a little bit.
It was a North Carolina Thanksgiving.
Yes.
It sounds like a Hallmark
Oh, my gosh.
movie.
And North Carolina Thanksgivings are almost always impeccable weather-wise. I don't know why we luck out that way, but it was like, I don't know, 60-ish degrees by the time we were eating, so everybody's eating outside, maybe a little cooler than that. Kids are playing on the swings, everybody's running around in the yard, the dogs are wrestling. It's very idyllic.
That sounds
It's
wonderful.
nice.
Yeah.
It's always a little bit of an adventure because the cousins are there. There are how many cousins total? There's 7 in the house. Little kids, all under 10.
My gosh.
And the babies are there. And every time you get to the grandparents' house with the babies, you're in a new stage of baby-proofing necessities, right?
Oh, yeah, sure. Because they're not
they
gonna
change.
Yeah, of course.
And but the house is prepared for grandchildren. So it's not totally crazy. But there are things that you realize as soon as you get there, like, oh, let's move that up a shelf. Let's move that up a shelf. Because these kids are pretty mobile right now.
It's totally true.
And there's 2 of them. We only broke one thing. So I was pretty proud.
What was it?
And it wasn't the toddler, which surprised me. It was the baby. He pulled up on a little decorative table and knocked off just a planter. And I picked it up. Oh. I looked at it and I was like, I really hope that's not irreplaceable. And I picked it up and found like a Home Goods sticker on the bottom. And I was like, we're good. I think we're good.
That's good. That's good.
So that happened. We had delicious food. There's so many people at Steve's family's Thanksgiving. It's a real to-do. It's like 30 plus
Do they
people.
have one giant turkey or what do they do?
They do a ham and part of it. So it's a couple turkey breasts and a ham.
You really need like 2 ovens.
But it's like every southern casserole you can possibly imagine at this. Like there's sweet potatoes. There's the green casserole. There's a cornbread casserole. There's everything.
No Jell-O.
Oh, we had one Jell-O-based salad. It's called like Orange Dream or something. It's like a creamsicle type salad with Cool Whip and mandarin oranges and some Jell-O.
I would have that.
It was quite good.
I would have that.
It's quite good. So that was that. And then today is my second kid's birthday.
Oh, my goodness.
And we are going to go right after school today to pierce her ears. So that's on the docket today. We're going to Claire's. We have an appointment.
Yes, that's where you go.
Yes,
apparently,
well,
and it's sterile enough.
Sometimes the modern parents, they take them to like the piercing shop because it's supposed to be those guys are like very skilled. And I've known some piercers in my like
you don't go to a doctor for this, although
no. In my wayward youth, I knew some piercers and tattoo artists, and they do very quality work. And so some people will take their kids there. I feel like that's like a bit of a gateway drug. Do I want to take my kid into the piercing? I want to take my kid to Claire's, where the only thing they're seeing is like I could buy 6 headbands for $10. Like that's the kind of
and by the way,
influence.
at Claire's, that's the deal. You try to buy one thing,
Oh, You
in
cannot
case you're wondering,
get one thing at
you
Claire's.
can buy one thing, or you can get 6 things, and then you get another 10 for free. It's like the what is the suit the suit store, Joseph A. Banks of trinkets,
yes, it is.
Of girls' trinkets.
So I'm taking her because my arbitrary rule is that they turn 8 and they can have their ears pierced. It's just because I got mine done at 8. There's no other reason for it, and I've learned that pretty much every mom is like this. They just set the line at wherever they got.
Well, you always
their
hear
ears
like
pierced.
some babies have their ears
Yes,
pierced,
different
right?
cultures do different things. So like one of my best friend growing up, her mother's Mexican, and so they got her ears were pierced from day one. But I had to wait till I was 8. Also, I was nervous because I was.
Is your daughter nervous,
no,
or is
she's
she excited?
100% excited. And when
does it hurt?
Yeah, it's not that big a deal. It's like a bruise. It's not. I think it's a little bit. It's more the anticipation because they put the little gun by your ear and then you're waiting for like thunk, clunk. But I don't remember it being problematic. And then my older one, she seemed fine when she got hers done a couple of years ago. I did realize at that time it's much more expensive than I remembered it being, which of course makes sense because it was 1988 when I got my.
Well, inflation and then now real inflation. Now
Yes.
now the inflation even more so.
So it's probably even more for this kid than it was 2 years ago for the other kid.
Definitely.
So we will embark on that adventure
really
today,
exciting.
and she's very excited.
Our daughter has yet to have her ears pierced.
Really?
I know, and she wants to. And Kate has decided that they're going to go together so that Kate can have her ears re-pierced because she hasn't worn earrings for so long that they closed up.
Yeah, I have 2 sets, and the second set is not operational anymore. I don't think, but the regular ones are. The vintage ones from 1988. Anyway, so we're going to do that. Okay. Exciting day in our
Very
house.
exciting. Good luck.
Good
luck to everyone.
Thank you. Okay, let's get to the news, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, a lot happened in the Israel-Hamas war while we were off for Thanksgiving, including some rounds of hostage releases, which is on one hand uplifting, and on the other, there aren't really a ton of happy endings here.
No,
you know, there's
it can be disconcerting.
Yes. So a lot of the releases in these early days, the original deal was 5 days of ceasefire for 4 or 5 days of ceasefire for 50 hostages.
Yeah.
And this has been bandied about for a while. I've been negotiating this for a bit. I do think it's a bit unseemly to sort of do celebrations and pats on the back for this kind of thing.
Yeah,
there
for
are
their
still
good. Also, pats on the back to Hamas for being so kind.
Yeah, for releasing them and for releasing them like at least
after
ambulatory.
they killed other members of their family, right. and then in one case having to write this thank you note saying thank you. I was treated so well.
And a 12-year-old who was released just yesterday was also used in a hostage video. So they do not deserve credit for having let these children go. Many of the released people were women and children.
Right.
I am heartened to hear that many of the children got to stay with whatever parent was with them. At least there's some comfort in that. Many of them didn't have parents. Yeah. Abigail Idan, who turned 4 in captivity, is an American citizen. She lost both her parents, and she was there for that. Now, she ran at the time on October 7th. She ran to her best friend's house, a family with 3 kids, the Brodich family. And that father left the mom and his 3 children and Abigail in their safe room to go fight outside. While he was gone, they were abducted. He's had almost no proof of life for 50 days until just this week when his wife, all 3 children, and Abigail were released. Now, Abigail is the tragedy here, obviously, because she lost her parents, but they were apparently all kept together, and that family is reunited, which is a miracle. He has been, the father, Avihai, has been on an international tour to advocate for them. And then there was a great clip of their dog, Rodney, being reunited with the children yesterday.
Going crazy.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the reunification videos with parents is, of course, moving, and I teared up at those. The dog really got me. Yeah. The dog really got me. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other ones that we've talked about on the show before. Emily Hand, of course, turned 9 while she was in captivity. Hers is a very tragic story. She had already lost her mother when she was very young. She lost her stepmother on October 7th, and then she was there for 50 days. She's the daughter of the Irish-Israeli man, I believe, right. Who we've seen in the news throughout, and she was returned to her family. But again, all of these kids who come back and all these people who come back will sustain significant trauma from these 50 days.
Right. And there's already a battle over the narrative of, they say they were treated this way, but I'm sure they were treated better, or they were treated nicely as per, the thank you notes or whatever else. And we have evidence of this and photos of this, but it's very unclear. And I think we should just take the hostages' word about how they are treated as what happened.
Well, and you'll notice that in some cases, the mother who was with children will look very thin.
Oh, yeah.
And that is partly because it seems that they were not getting enough food, and that the moms in some of these cases were giving food to the children and not taking it themselves.
It's sort of very bizarre and dark, this idea of a goodwill gesture by the very people who took them in the first place. And their argument is going to be, of course, by having done this, and logically speaking, if we are to give back all the hostages, why attack us? Because we did this kind thing to you by giving them back after we killed some of their family members.
These bargaining chips that are mere children who we brutally slayed much of their neighborhoods and families and then took them with us. But give us some credit, guys.
Right. And this whole argument that they didn't even, take as many hostages as they claimed, and well, it's clear now they have them. They're holding them. Right. And everyone is, a lot of people are worked up over, Israeli military operations in Gaza. Again, ask why they were doing this in the first place. And I mean, they love to get back and forth about who started what first. But the fact is, there was a ceasefire until October 7th, and then that was broken, and then they retaliated.
I want to mention real quick that because we've talked about them on the show before, the mom who was speaking about wanting to go to Gaza to help her children, 15-year-old Daphna and I think 3 or 4-year-old Ella. Mm-hmm. She had said, "Take me to Gaza. I need to change my daughter's bandage."
Yes.
She was reunited with her 2 daughters, and it was
good.
Really beautiful. The idea that any of this is that these folks are coming out alive at all is a blessing.
Yeah.
And also a good thing to remember when you're hearing stories about how hostages were treated or how they're reacting. One, a lot of them are children, so they shouldn't be on camera and telling a bunch of stories because they have trauma that they need to deal with in other ways. Also, many of these people have family members still back with Hamas, so they're not free to speak in a way that they might otherwise.
That's a very good point. So 2 issues stood out with me about this. The first thing is the terrorists, Hamas, have now seized control of the timetable, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of how long they can delay further
because for
attacks.
every 10 they say they'll release, they get another day of ceasefire, right?
Right. And
they've already violated by blowing up IEDs around IDF
that's
folks who are in designated areas. By the way,
that's what I saw on the news today as well. They have over 200 hostages. They can stretch this out, and they could even say for 4 or 5 every couple days. How much are you willing to put up? What price are you willing to put on that? The Hamas is very aware that Israel puts a very high value on every Israeli life.
Yes. And actually, I will tout the Commentary podcast that if you're not listening to it, you should, and read commentary. But John Podhoretz has been helpful to me because I didn't actually realize that it is a requirement of Jewish law and tradition that you ransom hostages in a way that it is not a requirement for Americans or for Christians. And it's a different thing.
That's right. And it's the exact reverse for Hamas, where they glorify martyrdom.
Yes.
It serves 2 purposes. One, it drives recruitment in the cause. And the other thing is it actually serves their purposes of, using them as human shields or using them as cannon fodder. And the other problem is, of course, the ratio of the exchange, because they're releasing for every Israeli hostage, innocent person that was taken, you're releasing, Palestinians who were in jail, and they were probably in jail for, good reasons. And as more of this comes out, you talk about, some woman who was, involved in a stabbing spree during the Second Intifada, for example.
Right.
And it goes back to they talk about, for example, I mean, it's not as bad as the exchange of the famous one was Gilad Shalit, right? In 2011, he was an Israeli soldier, and he was exchanged for over 1,000 Palestinians. A number of these people who were responsible for the October 7 attack, including Sinwar,
right?
They served time in Israeli prison, and then they get released.
And then they go to plan.
Yes, and that's the whole plan.
The October 7th.
I mean, this whole thing about the pause that we're seeing right now, Mary Katharine, is it's buying enough time so they can rearm, and when the time comes, they can kill more Jews. That's the game they're playing here. But it tells me something, and this is the other thing I wanted to bring up, which is I don't think that the hostage extrication efforts by the IDF were going well, because I don't think they actually wanted to negotiate. They would much rather that they rescue the hostages themselves, like the Entebbe raid, in the 1970s.
Right.
But
if at all possible.
If at all possible,
no.
But it tells me that it wasn't going well, and that's worrisome.
Elan Levy, who's an Israeli spokesperson, was asked by the BBC if perhaps the exchange of 3 lives for 3 Palestinian prisoners for 1 child, Israeli innocent child kidnapped, if perhaps that didn't reflect that the Israelis put less value on Palestinian lives than Israeli lives.
Yeah.
And his face is really the part of the clip that you must see, because he just raises his eyebrows at her, sits there, and I for one, wish he had just sat there longer staring at her. And then he answers her in a very polite, though astonished way.
That's amazing.
I was speaking to a hostage negotiator this morning. He made the comparison between the 50 hostages that Hamas has promised to release, as opposed to the 150 prisoners that are Palestinians that Israel has said that it will release. And he made the comparison between the numbers and the fact that, does Israel not think that Palestinian lives are valued as highly as Israeli lives?
That is an astonishing accusation. If we could release 1 prisoner for every 1 hostage, we would obviously do that. We're operating in horrific circumstances. We're not choosing to release these prisoners who have blood on their hands. We are talking about people who have been convicted of stabbing and shooting attacks. Notice the question of proportionality doesn't interest Palestinian supporters when they are able to get more of their prisoners out. But really, it is outrageous to suggest that the fact that we are willing to release prisoners who are convicted of terrorism offenses, more of them than we are getting our own innocent children back, somehow suggests that we don't care about Palestinian lives. Really, that's a disgusting accusation.
Gee, if we could exchange 1 for 1, we would certainly do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where we are on the sort of press's understanding about that. Before we move to that, 2 things. I know I've talked frequently about Kafir Bibas, who is 10 months old and is the age of my youngest child. He has an older brother who's 4, who's also in Gaza, and their parents were taken with them, I believe. There's pictures of these beautiful redheaded children being taken into Gaza. They have not been on these lists, and everybody's sort of waiting with bated breath. The IDF has learned, apparently, that they were maybe sold to another group who is in southern Gaza, far away from the fighting, where maybe Hamas hopes to make its last stand, and that perhaps they're
in southern Gaza.
They're unable to locate and get that family for handing over to Israel. So that is something I will continue to pray for.
That's right.
Every single day. And the other point I wanted to make before I forget it is that the IDF has said this exchange, I think you're right, that if at all possible, they would like to extricate the hostages without doing this.
Right.
But their line has been, our military operation has been more successful than we thought it would be, and that is giving us space to be able to do this without fearing that it will undermine the entire effort. So
the goal for Israel remains the elimination of Hamas, but that is not necessarily the goal of other people in the world who are maybe at this very moment still supportive of Israel. But if you think about, for example, President Biden and his message about we're not going to stop until every American hostage is returned.
Right.
That gives me pause because it's once they have their hostages returned, do they then say eliminating Hamas really isn't the objective anymore?
Yes, that is concerning.
That is concerning. And then the other thing is you mentioned the Bibas family.
Yes.
Yes, there have been a lot. I think there are a lot of these trades going on and bartering for different things with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or possibly even the Houthis in Yemen, or criminal organizations and such. It's not good.
No.
And if they move down to southern Gaza, if that is what happened to this family, then the administration, for example, is opposed to Israel going further than they have to. But again, the goal for Israel is to make sure Gaza is no longer in charge.
And it must continue.
Did I say Gaza?
No,
Hamas is no longer in charge of Gaza.
And that must remain the goal, obviously, for Netanyahu, and who this is his swan song at any rate, politically and militarily. Yeah. It seems like it must be the goal for the Biden administration as well. I understand that they have this left flank yelling at them. Yeah. But what...
I mean, a real deep state, because, I mean, you have these, members of the administration, some openly, many not.
Right.
And on Capitol Hill who are, expressing, their opposition.
So I get that they have this left flank that's very loud and is screaming at them about this. But given that Biden has sort of thrown in on the Hamas is evil and untrustworthy and they must be wiped out. I mean, he's pretty much been on board with the rhetoric. How does he back off of that now, and what good does that do him if they are left in that place and they inevitably regroup and they inevitably hurt more Israelis? Yeah. I mean, there is no good outcome there.
No. Unless they just hope people forget, but I hope they don't. It does remind me of Barack Obama as well, when he drew the line in the sand. Or the red line, whatever it was he said, regarding Syria and using chemical weapons. And, of course, they dropped a chlorine bomb and then nothing happened.
Oops. Yeah.
No, doing nothing is still an option. We like to think it's not, but it still is. Right. But as you mentioned, the objective remains to eliminate, neutralize, and then replace him with something, end the brainwashing, and replace that leadership so the Palestinians have something better to look forward to. And I am glad that it's a sentiment shared by us and others, including Elon Musk.
Yes,
who was recently in Israel.
Did he visit Israel? Correct. Yes. And bless her heart, I'm gonna blank on her name, but one of the moms of a son who was taken to Gaza. I love her gumption, because every world leader or every prominent person she meets, her son's arm was blown off while he was trying to defend people where they were attacked. And so he's gravely injured, and who knows how he's being treated. She shows video to every person she meets of him being abducted. So she showed it to the Pope. Oh. She's standing there with her cell phone, like, look at this. Look at what happened to my son. She showed it to Elon Musk. Look at what happened to my son. And on one hand, it's infuriating that grieving families have to do this to bring attention to what has happened to their loved ones. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like non-Israelis would have to do this to prove this has happened. Right. But when you've got people tearing down posters because they don't think it really happened, then, you got to get the word out.
Some of it I wonder is how much they think it doesn't happen. And the other side is, we know, and we got to keep this a secret. I'm not sure.
Part of it might be that. Can we talk briefly about the media bias? Woo, baby.
They're getting better? They're learning the lessons?
No, they're not. They're not. This one's actually pretty amazing. The New York Times has this as a headline. First of all, a lot of pictures of released Palestinian criminals.
Yes.
People who have stand accused or have committed crime or have been convicted of crimes, violent crimes. Plenty of pictures of them, and not so much of the returning Israelis in the immediate aftermath of this.
The ones who were not held in jail.
So we have a picture of a woman hugging her family member, and it says, a Palestinian woman, a disfigured woman whose case has become well known is among the Palestinians released. Well, she was disfigured because she blew up a car bomb by IDF soldiers in an attempt to injure them. In fact, did injure one of them, who I believe still hasn't fully recovered, if I remember correctly from what I was reading yesterday. So it seems like a bit of an oversight not to note that her disfiguring came at the hands of her terroristic activity.
Right. You have to go into the piece to find that out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But if you're just looking at it, as a lot of people do on social media, then they're saying, this poor lady.
That's wild.
This poor lady.
She's just a kind disabled woman.
No, there are a lot of efforts
that Israel has.
As we know, there are a lot of efforts, within the media to spin things a certain way. And I think Beckett Adams was writing about this recently in National Review, and we mentioned here on this show about calling these innocent Israeli children being quote unquote detained,
right,
as opposed to being kidnapped.
Yes.
So we know.
And then people will say, okay, well, a lot of the prisoners that they're releasing are minors. Well, yes, some of them are indeed teenagers. Mm-hmm. But they were teenagers who attempted stabbings on video of Israeli citizens.
Right.
So that is a distinction that we should make. The Washington Post, which has had some real wild examples, in a piece that Eric Erickson pointed out, says, this is a sentence just purportedly fact, not an opinion piece.
Oh, no.
Now Israel is a military powerhouse led by a far-right coalition, and the Biden administration has become identified with a military campaign that has killed more than 13,000 Palestinians, displaced hundreds of thousands of others, created a humanitarian disaster, and damaged America's moral authority in much of the world. Wow.
This was their Washington Post reporter, Edward Said.
Perhaps. That 13,000 number, of course, can't be verified, and it comes from Hamas. This is all like a press release for Hamas.
Again, you do want to take both sides because you don't know who to trust. Like during World War II, if you were reporting, do you take the word of the BBC or Joseph Goebbels?
Right.
I don't know, we might have to do both.
Who's to say?
We don't know. Goebbels got to us first. Goebbels.
So just watch out there for that.
Really
I did want to note the Irish. I know we're doing a lot on this, but there's a lot of news. The Irish PM
Varadkar,
who tweeted about Emily Hand, one of his citizens. He says, "This is a day of enormous joy and relief for Emily Hand and her family. An innocent child who was lost has now been found and returned, and rebreathe a massive sigh of relief. Our prayers have been answered."
She's like the prodigal son.
Yeah, she just went off to
left
party
on her own
with dad's money. She was like, "Give me my inheritance. I'm going to Gaza." Okay, so people got very angry about this. The defense from the PM is, I was just quoting the prodigal son.
Yes, well.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because is he suggesting that she made a bad decision? No, maybe he is.
And that he'll forgive her.
Yeah.
No. You know what? Perhaps it was a clumsy use of scripture, lost and found. However, the clumsy use of scripture came because he was trying to avoid calling out Hamas.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here. And
God forbid he uses the word abducted, kidnapped.
Yeah, and you know who was mad about that? Not just me. Conor McGregor.
Oh, boy.
Conor McGregor, very, very, very famous UFC fighter, and Irishman. Famous Irishman as well. Former UFC champion Conor McGregor ripped the Prime Minister of Ireland for downplaying the kidnapping and eventual release of an Irish-Israeli child by Hamas terrorists on Saturday. McGregor called Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar a disgrace after he used the terms lost and found to describe the abduction and release of 9-year-old Emily Hand. She was abducted by an evil terrorist organization, the UFC superstar wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter. "What is with you and your government and your paid-for media affiliates constantly downplaying, attempting to repress horrific acts that happen to children? You are a disgrace."
Good for Conor McGregor, and this is why people are saying...
If there's anyone with moral clarity,
there you go.
I've always said, it's Conor McGregor.
An amazing man, a terrific fighter, a terrible pitcher. I don't know if you... I saw his first opening pitch because, as you know, I was practicing for mine. For my Lakewood Blue Claws game or my Jersey Shore Blue Claws game, and he attempts to throw one. It did not go well.
It didn't go well.
But that's okay because that's not his expertise.
Well,
that's not his area.
He can beat up whoever
who makes
has
fun
an
of
issue
him.
with
And
that.
he would crush him.
So he's also...
I can say it from a safe distance.
He had also gone after Irish leaders for their response to this recent stabbing by another Irish citizen from the immigrant community who had stabbed children.
Yeah.
And he had gone after leaders for that as well. And now there's, of course, buzz about Conor McGregor for PM.
President. Oh, for PM, yes, of course. I would support that, I think.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it.
Ireland is a mess right now. And they have these riots. It's the first time I think they said in how many years that they've never seen it this bad, particularly in Dublin. But as you mentioned, it was this Algerian who had been living in Ireland for 20 years and was actually a citizen. It's unclear. He was living in a hostel. I'm not sure if this is a mental illness issue or if he's driven by terrorism or both. Well, but the Irish are not having it, and they're not having, since 2020, I think they've taken in over like 140,000 migrants, mostly from Ukraine, but it's a big deal for them. And they see what I was going to say. Tensions are now, boiling over because what's happening in Israel. And they also see what happens with these rallies, the pro-Hamas rallies in London. And they don't want that.
Well, and it's funny because, of course, immediately protests of the stabbing are treated as far-right, dangerous, horrific rhetoric. Now, I have no doubt that there's bad rhetoric at these gatherings.
Sure.
But interesting that when the rhetoric is on the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas side, that's like just a excited and
those words don't hurt.
Animated expression of democracy.
You have people everywhere who actually literally feel unsafe by these words and by these actions. Yeah. And no one's actually doing anything about that.
Also, there was like an actual stabbing, a terrorist attack. Yeah. So to object
against
to that
kids
seems to me pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
And to have a protest about
So there are now calls, as you know, to limit free speech.
Oh, yes,
for
I did.
More laws.
I did see that.
And maybe we can add this in later, the Irish parliamentarian suggesting and saying that, yes, we are putting limits on your right to speak because it's making other people unsafe.
Yeah, so. Maybe crack down on the stabbing first.
Yeah. But I'm just more concerned about who gets to decide what speech gets censored. But we can always trust. Put our hands in.
You know what? If it's Conor McGregor, I'm fine with it. Okay. Just kidding. The state should not be involved in that. I'm so thankful for the First Amendment whenever I hear stories like that one. You want to do some 2024?
Let's do it.
All right. Did you know that the DeSantis Newsom debate is upcoming?
The Rumble
week?
In the Jungle. It's happening.
That is hosted by Hannity. It is, I believe,
big coup.
Takes place in Georgia. So in two ways, it is not on Gavin Newsom's home turf. He's going. Right. He's
a battleground state.
He's a talker. So I think he has that going for him.
That he can't resist.
Yes. So Fox News' Sean Hannity this is from Politico, is billing his Thursday debate between Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis as a Herculean clash between red and blue states. It's also a test of sorts for Hannity, with Newsom questioning whether the conservative TV host can treat him and DeSantis as equals. Well, first of all, that sounds like loser talk, Newsom. Making excuses before you even get in the ring. I'm stuck on Conor McGregor. Anyway.
Yes, that's good.
Let me walk around like this. His little walk. I can't do it without standing up. I actually can do it.
But
I
didn't know you do a Conor McGregor.
Yeah. Okay. In an interview with Politico, Hannity dismissed the Democrats' concerns and compared DeSantis and Newsom to political combatants, lauding both for their willingness to enter the ring with him. Oh, he's also stuck on Conor McGregor. He says, I'm into mixed martial arts, and anybody that steps into the octagon, I have deep respect for because you're stepping into a war. This is one of those moments where you have two heavyweights in the political arena that are going to have an opportunity to go head-to-head and talk about substantive, real issues and governing philosophies that affect everyone's lives.
I can imagine the questions that Hannity will ask DeSantis about going too far in his culture wars, how far do you have to get the state involved? And shouldn't we be all about sort of less state involvement in many of these things? But again, as I mentioned on previous shows, my one question for DeSantis remains: why should the rest of America want to be like California? That's it.
For Newsom, yeah.
For Newsom, rather. And again, it's great that you cleaned up the streets of San Francisco for a Chinese dictator.
I mean, there's a lot of easy shots for DeSantis to take here.
Yeah.
And by the way, anyone who thinks that DeSantis doesn't have off the top of his head the out-migration numbers for the state of California,
Those are facts too.
I assure you, he has them.
You just have to be able to rattle off these facts and say, how do you explain this? How is this Republicans' fault or something?
And then I guess Newsom is sort of a surrogate for Biden / a surrogate who wants his job. So I guess it's like a morning show situation. Wasn't that the plot of the morning show?
There's no replacing his vice president. So, I mean, they're locked in this.
You think so?
I'm going to say that. I'm going to say yes. We're all locked in this death grip.
I think they're all behind the scenes trying to do this and like not able to actually do it because it's like they've gone too far down this road. They're not quite Monty Burnsing it because they might have gone too far. I think you're right. So that's coming up Thursday. I'm excited to see that just because I think it's the matchup that is between two sort of sentient individuals who are pretty decent at talking about their preferred worldview. Even if I think Newsom's is crap, he can talk about it.
I mean, you can see his vision is a nightmare. But
meanwhile, on the endorsement front, Ron DeSantis gets the Vanderplatz endorsement, who's a very important social conservative in Iowa. He's, of course, going all in on Iowa. And actually, between Vanderplatz and the governor, very popular
Kim
governor
Reynolds
of Iowa, extremely good news for him on those fronts. And, could form a sort of momentum going into Iowa. This is the guy, by the way, Bob Vanderplatz is the guy who DeSantis stood up to the Republican Party and said, I'm going to his event.
Right. This is not a debate.
And
it's a forum.
At that event, by the way, which is a forum, other people then showed up because he had stood up to the RNC, and they had really good conversations and really interesting stories to tell because it was a forum, because it wasn't a debate.
If only more people cared. It's great for DeSantis. It's a very interesting strategy. We've seen this many times about concentrating on one state, make or break. Talk to Pete Buttigieg. He won Iowa.
Well, yeah, and the question is, winning Iowa, is that actually the springboard that you need it to be?
Yeah.
Often it's not. As President Rick Santorum will tell you.
I just checked before the taping of the show, the 538 number for Iowa, and there is some momentum for DeSantis. He's now only down 30 points to Trump. So it's Trump is standing in Iowa. He's at 44.7, and DeSantis is at 17.5. So almost at 20.
Yeah, some statistician, I believe it was maybe Sean Trendy, tweeted this morning something that will rile everyone up, which is not only is Trump, could he win? He is the favorite right now.
Yes, he is.
He's the favorite.
Presumptive
now,
nominee.
That changes a lot when you get into the ye olde legal calendar next year and what that looks like. But it remains to be seen whether anybody can actually throw him over. Let me pull up one more endorsement news. This is from Americans for Prosperity, which is a very big advocacy and policy group on the right, conservative group. By the way, full disclosure, I am affiliated with them on the Council of Advisors. But let me pull up their endorsement of Nikki Haley. This is Americans for Prosperity Action, which is the part that does things like the actual politicking. American people are ready to move on, with nearly 75% of Republican primary voters saying they are open to supporting a candidate other than Donald Trump. In addition, nearly 60% of Republican voters AFP spoke with, who have never voted in a primary or caucus, say they're extremely enthusiastic to vote for the first time. It's now time to help rally those voters behind a candidate who can win the primary and win the general election. At the outset of our strategy, we made clear that we would be businesslike in our decision. They had said they were going to endorse earlier this year. We would support a candidate capable of turning the page on Washington's toxic culture and a candidate who can win. And last night we concluded that analysis. That candidate is Nikki Haley. AFP Action is proud to throw our full support behind Nikki Haley, who offers America the opportunity to turn the page on the current political era.
DeSantis really could have used that money, because it's a race against time.
Yeah,
it's great news for Nikki. Again, I still don't know at the end of the day if any of this makes a difference, because you can spend all you want, but if people love Trump, then they love Trump. I mean, in the primary side.
Now, what I've been hearing from people who do grassroots with AFP and do this work is that those Trump supporters and their support is softer than it used to be.
Right.
That makes sense to me. There is a group that's smaller that is like, whatever must happen to avenge Mr. Trump, I will do.
Right.
Right? There's that kind of voter. But there's a lot of other voters who are looking at this and going, does this work out well for us? Yeah. However, Trump's on the trail. He's going to places where there are big crowds. Sometimes he has his own rallies, but he's going to South Carolina to the football game. Yes. He's going to UFC fights. He's showing up. He's doing his special brand of politicking. And he's up huge, despite all of the legal hits.
Well, one, he's more athletic than people like to give him credit for. He can throw, right? Wasn't he baseball, I think?
He was a baseball guy, I think. Or baseball and tennis? Is that right?
Yeah, see, tennis too.
Tennis is
golf, obviously,
very on brand,
now.
Right?
He's great at golf. And he's and so when he has a football, he could pass it. He can throw. So, I mean, that's one thing. You do think, as you were mentioning, about the support being soft. If, for some reason, somehow, he gets convicted. And again, he's a man who's been, 91 indictments, right? If he gets convicted, how many of those people suddenly express hesitation because they don't actually want to vote for a convicted felon?
Well, and nothing has brought him there yet. Yeah. But perhaps that would be the thing. But it feels, again, very Wile E. Coyote.
Right. And then the other thing, of course, is media exposure, as we've talked about. The more, we don't really see him in the news because they hate him so much that they don't want to show him. They said, they learned our lesson about all the free media they gave him the last time. They're not going to give it. They're not going to fall for it this time. But if they do, then if people see it, they can get reminded of, what we had for 4 years in terms of the brashness, unless that's what you like him for. And I was thinking about the same thing with, the various investigations and the 91 indictments. It may not be so much that he's winning in spite of it, but because of it.
I know. Yeah.
So here's my big thought. And I'm surprised they haven't done this, which is his 2024 message. It used to be "Make America Great Again," right? It should be 2024 Trump. This time it's personal. That really is. I think I'm making that announcement here.
I don't remember where I saw this reporting.
Free advice.
But there was reporting talking to on the ground Trump voters, and this Trump voter, and this again. The question is, what does soft support look like? Because this guy, who's someone interviewed, I don't know if it was New York Times or Politico, said in theory, so I'm at a rally for Trump, but in theory, I could vote for somebody else. Now, Trump would have to do something really, really awful. He would have to punt a baby on camera, and then I would probably consider not voting for him. And I was like, I'm not sure that's a soft support guy. I'm not sure how open
he's weighing his options. He's weighing his options.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Trump's over here practicing his kicks.
Yeah, I can do anything I want. But that's the thing. Yeah, the Fifth Avenue line. But, yeah. So, with Trump, we know everything he's done. Nothing's going to come out now. Oh, he had an affair?
Yes. This is one of the things that I find so
shocked about
perverse and depressing about this cycle is that one of the pitches for these two ancient men who no one wants to run except for a very small pocket on both sides of the aisle. One of the pitches for this face-off is they're so old and bad that we know all the bad things about these old men, and therefore no new bad things can come out. True. And also, is that what we're aiming for? It's,
we've really lowered the expectations. But that's
it
okay. They lowered the bar. We lowered the bar.
Nikki Haley's over here really?
Yeah.
Really? That's the knock against me? Is that you don't know every single horrible thing that anyone can make up about me because I haven't been.
That's the maddening thing for these other candidates, because they're like, okay, you look across the board, the battleground states and all the polls, Trump is beating Biden. We get it. He can be beaten even more if you had DeSantis or
But
Nikki
that is
Haley.
a much harder argument to make than this guy's losing, I can win. Yeah. Much harder argument. All right, well, there it is. Biden, on the other hand, has some thoughts on Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Yeah, let me pull him up. Here he goes. Eloquent as always.
Well, this past week, as Americans gathered around their own kitchen tables for Thanksgiving dinner, that was our goal, to give them a little more breathing room. And together, we made progress. From turkey to air travel to tank of gas, costs went down. They went down. Now, to people making a lot of money, that doesn't matter a whole lot because the costs are relatively small compared to wealthy incomes. In fact, as a share of earnings this Thanksgiving, dinner was the 4th cheapest ever on record. I want you all to know that. I look at all the press, look at that. The press is particularly excited about that, I can see.
First of all, he's standing with 2 Bidenomics big screens behind him, which look terrible, by the way. I guess the Obama graphic design people are not around anymore.
Yeah,
they won't do that for them. But also, as a share of earnings this Thanksgiving, dinner was the 4th cheapest ever on record. I want y'all to know that. I do not know what that means as a statistic. It reminds me of
almost as cheap as the Pilgrims. That's what I mean.
It reminds me of ESPN when they're like, well, did you know that this is the 3rd most prolific left-footed kicker to have scored a 35-yard field goal in the 3rd quarter in 2 SEC championships in a row.
Yeah.
Like that is the stat that we're pulling right now on Thanksgiving dinner.
And yet there will be a lot of people who will provide cover for him.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was thinking about Jared Bernstein, obviously Paul Krugman. You know, if you take out the cost of,
of all the things you have to buy
and fuel and other things, actually inflation is way down. I wanted to mention, by the way, Stephen Colbert, because this irked me. He was poking fun.
He's irked, y'all.
He's irked me. He was poking fun of Jason Chaffetz, right? So I assumed this was on Fox, and Chaffetz was complaining about the cost of a turkey. He said he spent $90 on a turkey. So Colbert and his writers, let's be honest here, were like, oh, quote, according to the latest data from the Department of Agriculture, the average cost of a frozen turkey is $1.25. So if Jason Chaffetz spent $90 at $1.25 a pound, that means he must have gotten a 72-pound turkey. The key here is one, frozen. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, if you buy fresh, I guarantee you Stephen Colbert did not get himself a frozen butterball.
Right.
I saw this price, a 13-pound heritage turkey. So this is the fanciest you can get.
The good stuff.
The good stuff,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But let's just be honest here, that this is probably the kind of turkey that Stephen Colbert gets, and it's a heritage turkey, 13 pounds, $250. So
okay,
I'm just saying, and then that's on the really expensive end. I get that, but let's not pretend.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up one more thing on that note. Food pricing and people shilling about it. Yeah. This is from a Taylor Lorenz piece on inflation of fast food prices and how some of the stories of what people buy in fast food lines have gone viral on TikTok and other places. Haha, live by the TikTok, die by the TikTok. So on December 20th, 2022, Topher Olive went to a McDonald's in the town of Post Falls, Idaho, and ordered a limited edition smoky double quarter pounder BLT with fries and a Sprite. The meal cost $16.10, and he posted the receipt on TikTok. This went viral. It showed up hundreds of thousands of times to people, and many people reported on this thing. Now, it is a novelty item, and it's a meal. Then we get to Taylor Lorenz refuting, telling you that the normies have it wrong and fast food items are not that much more expensive. The average Big Mac nationally as of this summer cost $5.58, up from $4.89, or roughly 70 cents before Biden took office, according to an index maintained by The Economist. That's up more than 10%, but is not $16. I'm not an economist, but I am a fast food economist.
Yes.
And I know everything about fast food pricing, as do most normie Americans. If there's one thing that normie Americans have on lock and are not doing disinformations on, it is fast food pricing. Yeah. Okay, a Big Mac is just a sandwich, so it doesn't cost as much.
Right? She's not getting the meal. Again,
she's not doing a Big Mac meal.
No,
and she's lying to readers while telling her readers that the normies on TikTok have it wrong.
And they're going to believe her, by the way. So remind me again, if you can go back, what was the meal that
it was?
What did Topher get?
Do you want to get one? It was a smoky double quarter pounder BLT with fries and a Sprite
from
McDonald's. It's in Idaho.
That sounds fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I've never seen the smoky double quarter pounder BLT.
No, neither have I. But they do test markets, as you know, so that we might not get what.
But I will tell you, around here, double quarter pounder meal.
Oh, a double? Yeah,
with fries
easily.
Fries and a drink is at least $13.
Yeah, well over, because not so recently. But I remember going into McDonald's and wanting to get my surf and turf, which would be a quarter pounder or a Big Mac if you like. But I chose, I think, a quarter pounder, not a double, just a quarter pounder fish fillet sandwich and fries. And it was like $13, $14.
Yeah. When I go,
and that's not even counting a beverage.
For the family, when we do a quick fast food run,
it's a lot.
We're up to $40, $50 at this point.
You might as well just go to, wherever. So, I mean, that's outrageous.
We're gonna go. Okay. We're gonna go high end and do macaroni grill from now on. Okay, Cheesecake Factory. As long as we're spending that much money. Okay. So that on the inflation, and this is the thing about Biden's 2024 run. Yeah. He's not very much running a campaign. I don't think has what it takes to be out there on the trail. The thing about him is that if he's refuted or if he meets a voter who has something to say about his policies, he's not digging himself out of that hole. He's not making an argument in a compelling way. No. Once he's out there, they're going to try to hide him. And then they're going to, when he's speaking in public, deny real things like the Big Mac meal cost and tell people that Thanksgiving was the fourth least expensive as a share of earnings. Like as what? As a share of GDP?
Yeah.
As a share of household earnings? As what?
It's bizarre.
I don't think it's a good pitch is my point.
Yeah.
I don't think it's great. Okay. Can we do an update on the Venmo tax rule?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Just to let you guys know, the Internal Revenue Service offered a surprise paperwork reprieve to millions of Americans as tax filing season nears, delaying a new requirement affecting people who sell stuff on eBay, resell concert tickets, and use payment processors such as Venmo. This is the $600 threshold. Yes. For the second straight year, the IRS postponed enforcement of a law that requires those e-commerce and payment platforms to send the agency information about many users who receive more than $600 in revenue a year. The old threshold was more than $20,000. But, you got to get those billionaires with their $600 transactions. Interestingly, I don't even remember what it was a pay for. But this is the trick with these guys, right? Mm-hmm. They realize this is politically unpalatable, so they're not going to enact it. Right. But it was enacted as a pay for some crazy other thing they wanted to spend money on.
They spun this as we're going to go after the rich. Yeah. Nobody's going to escape us, including the 1%. When in fact, this was a way to sort of seize more revenue from small businesses. Yeah. A lot of individuals and small businesses. But then when
Facebook Marketplace and titans,
then they recognized that this would involve millions of forms, and they just basically admitted, the IRS basically admitted that they don't have the manpower to process those forms yet. Mm-hmm. If only they had 80,000 more.
You got to get those agents in there. Yeah. Got to get that new personnel in there.
Wait, I see how this is all coming together.
And then we have one more clip that I had to play for you. Here we go. This is the Secretary of Education.
Yeah, he's in charge of our learning.
We're going to set up follow-up calls with every governor we met with to make sure we're available. As I think it was President Reagan said, we're from the government. We're here to help. There are resources there, there's technical assistance there, and there's a playbook that could support the work you're doing. Count on us as a partner in this. Our students are waiting. Thank you.
Apparently, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona does not know the full context of that quote, which is the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That's important context for that quote from Ronald Reagan.
Well, Mary Katharine, as the great John F. Kennedy once said, ask what your country can do for you.
Do we think we don't think
was this on the fly? What?
We don't think he's being cheeky, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
This is just a blatant misuse, and he doesn't know the difference.
And it's either one of two things. One, it's all just swimming around in his mind, and he thought, I can use Reagan to my advantage here because he said something to this effect, but I don't know what it is. Or he had some lackey write this and add this to his speech. I don't know if that was improvised.
Some Gen Zer was like, Ronald Reagan loved government programs.
That's right.
I've just discovered this really interesting fact. Let me put it in the speech.
Okay. How are we on time? Are we?
Give us one more silly thing.
Okay, I'll give you one silly
Let's
thing.
End with silly thing.
This was reported on Entertainment Weekly, and I'm just going to read this. So this is not me. This is Entertainment Weekly's report, truncated.
And this is my live reacts.
There we go. Disneyland chaos as guest strips naked, runs through It's a Small World ride. An unidentified Disneyland guest climbed through several of the attraction's interior show scenes, ran through the ride's water canals, and was reportedly apprehended by authorities after traversing the exterior of the ride while completely naked. Quote, "We noticed he started climbing onto the different parts of the ride, and we noticed that he was undressed," Megan Carmona says, adding that by the time the guest reached her sightline, he was already down to his underwear. Quote, "He just didn't look like he knew where he was. He looked worried. My friends and I had seen him, and it looked like he was going to jump on us. The cast member got him to sit down for a minute, but after he continued walking in the opposite direction behind us, once he got to a different part of the ride, he ended up walking into the water and started drinking the water and ran off toward the entrance of the ride." He was obviously taken.
First of all, second look at It's a Small World.
And, right.
Up, folks. No.
There is an NSFW video of it, and yes, it is a small world.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all,
yeah.
Underwear and naked are two different things.
No, both. He eventually, the video I saw,
went all the way
he
down.
went the full deal.
And he was on the actual car, like the boat.
Yeah, he was hopping. No, he was hopping around everything. Sorry, for the people at YouTube get to see my movements on this.
Because it's one thing if he's on display with the poor small,
he was roaming
plywood
around.
Children.
He was roaming around.
But if he's with the real children, that's going to be a problem.
I have a theory. Ready for this?
Okay.
I got one word for you.
Mm-hmm.
Edibles.
Yeah.
If you're taking sort of a psychedelic, so for those who don't know what I mean, but most of you do.
Yes.
Psychedelic mushrooms. You go on it's already freaky, that ride, unless you're a little kid.
Yes.
It's the repeating theme. It feels like it goes on 15 times before the ride's over.
I feel like
if
there's a psychedelics handbook, which there probably isn't because people who do psychedelics are probably not reading a ton of handbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Look, now I'm going to get email from the responsible psychedelics users. I got you. I understand. Okay. But in general, I don't think there's a handbook. If there was a handbook, it should say no, it's a small world specifically.
Yeah, if you are taking this, do not go to have you ever seen the movie Knocked Up?
Yes.
And Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd, they're in Vegas. They take mushrooms and then they go to it's like Cirque du Soleil or one of those, and they're totally freaked out. They're totally freaked out. It's hilarious, and don't do it.
Just sit in front of your Christmas tree.
I think this is what happened.
Calm down, people.
That's my theory.
Okay, I don't think that's a bad theory. I will say, what is this? Florida or
Disneyland?
Disneyland.
California.
Okay, this is California.
Yeah,
California.
Yeah, not Florida, man.
Even Disney is falling apart in California more than they are in Florida. Okay?
Bring that up.
Okay,
with
yes.
Gavin Newsom.
Talk to Gavin Newsom about that. No, but I do think not a great story for Disney brand. That's not.
No, they're already
they're
getting over the Marvels.
They should have better security than that.
Yeah. Okay. I have one quick correction. Multiple listeners, Mary Katharine, multiple listeners inform us the heavy synth band that we were thinking of was Mannheim Steamroller.
Oh, thanks. What did we say?
Trans-Siberian.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
that, but that also is a thing.
It has some too.
Okay,
but yes, I think they're correct. That the more synthy one.
All our listeners to pointing out, it is definitely Mannheim Steamroller. That's what we were thinking of. Okay, that wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Matus. And for those watching on YouTube, I hope we did a better job moving the microphone so you can see
our face.
Mary Katharine's face.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. Thank you for getting hammered responsibly. And this has been Never Listen to Your Podcast.